Hello, DM Geezer Jim here, continuing on our The Fiends and D&D playlist special here. We are finishing up our, officially halfway through our look at the lower planes. We've looked at Gehenna, uh, which is still Gehenna. We looked at Tartarus that became Carcerai. And now we're looking at Hades, aka the Grey Waste, sitting right in the middle of the land of pure neutral evilness. Was mentioned heavily in our look at the Yugoloths, and if you're familiar with the Blood War, it's kind of the middle ground, as it were, for the big battleground between the devils and the demons, the Yugoloths and all of that filling in. So, forewarning, we're going to give this the same treatment. We'll probably be reading a little bit more from second edition because it makes some good homages to more of our mythology. Gives some good locations and definitions to Hades. Makes it more than just the Grey Waste, the spot in between where everyone fights, which it can be devolved. It has devolved into that to an extent, but second edition had a lot of good lore, so we're going to spend some time on that. As usual, thanks for joining me. We will be doing RTFM. We'll be doing a lot of reading here as well. I'll break in on occasion with an editorial, but Hades is a little bit more of a potential for destination and adventure, long-term adventure, primarily because of the influx of devils and demons, Yugoloths, Garruleths, and everything else in the middle. It is the middle ground, the meeting ground, the stomping ground between all the lower planes, so you can probably have some fun here. We're going to go in starting with the first edition, go forward from there. Whereas Tartarus and Carcerai, you were somewhat limited to interacting with demons and maybe Garruleths, and where we're over in Gehenna, you were looking at devils and Yugoloths. Hades kind of has access to all of them. As it was defined in first edition Player's Handbook, excuse me, where'd my mouse go? Hades, the three glooms of absolute evil, neutral evil. Second edition, again, Planescape box set. We're starting with this, and then kind of looking at the Planes of Conflict that goes into a lot more detail about it. I do have the Blood War pulled up a little bit for not a whole lot of reference. I decided I was gonna look at it, and then we decided now we'll look at it on a different day. It's kind of its own things. But the Planes of Conflict, the Endless Despair, the Grey Waste, followed by the third edition Manual of the Planes, brief entry into the fourth edition. Manual of the Planes as well, and then ending over here at Hades, the Grey Waste in 5th edition Dion's Guide. So let's get to it. Whoops, wrong page. Let's get to it. The Grey Wastes, neutral evil. Oinos, Niflheim, and Pluton. These are the fabled three glooms of the Grey Waste that a cutter hears so much about. This land is evil solely, and them that's here don't care if they're in it alone or if they're in it together. This is the great battlefield of the Blood War, called Hades by some primes, but anyone who's ever been here knows why the Grey Waste says it all. The three glooms are just that, or so the chant goes, dull gray lands. The earth is gray, the sky is gray, even the petitioners here are gray. There's no color here. As soon as Assad steps onto the plane, everything he's got turns white, black, or gray. There's no sun, no moon, no stars, just gray. The grayness reaches right into the hearts. I'm the blobbiest and the grayest of the gray, sorry. The grayness reaches right into the hearts of the petitioners. They're a balmy folk without any feeling or emotion. They don't laugh, they don't cry, and they don't care. All they do is despair, their life and their hopes sucked right out of them. They make great liars, because a basher can never see a whit of emotion in their faces. But they're too lost or bothered to bother with even with lying most of the time. The despair eventually reaches into their heart of travelers who stay too long, sucking a little life from them too. I see a Burke with a dead-looking stare, and he's a gloom bug of the Grey Waste for sure. 3 layers. Oinos. This is the layer of stunted trees, roving fiends, and virulent disease, ruled by an Ultraloth prince. His citadel is the great fortress Kin Oin, the wasting tower. From a distance, it looks like the spinal cord of some flayed beast soaring into the air. Closer up, it takes on the form of a great tower encased by lesser towers. It's said to stand 20 miles high, and hence dungeons beneath it as deep. But this is some Barmy's exaggeration. The tower is a necessity, for the prince of this domain constantly finds himself under attack by his rival Yugoloths. The only time they unite is when threatened with another invasion of demons or devils, Tanari or Batizu troops, who used this lair as a battleground for much of their endless blood war. Next up in our brief is Niflheim. The second layer is more alive than the first, being free of the wasting disease that holds the land. Though the trees, mostly pine trees, are more abundant, they sport no color but gray. Thick mists hang among the trunk, gray-white on the white, gray-black background. This is the realm of Hel from the Norse pantheon. Her palace is a great hall of wood. Deadly poison drips from the ceiling, and the floor writhes with serpents. Reaching into this lair is a root of Yggdrasil, the world ash. Curled around this root is a great wingless dragon, Nidhogg. Whoever gnaws at the roots and will ultimately kill the tree. Nidhogg could be slain, but her place would be taken by one of her children, so what's the point? Third layer is Pluton. The third layer, the Grey Waste, is connected to the upper planes by the tunnels of Mount Olympus. This layer holds willows, olives, and pulpars, all black and slowly dying for want of care. This is the realm of Hades, Lord of the Dead. He lives within a palace of gray marble protected by strong walls. The gates to his realm are beaten bronze, impossible for all but the greatest heroes to open. Just beyond the gate is Cerberus, three-headed dog who guards the entrance of Hades' domain. Imprisoned here are many fallen tyrants and vain heroes. The despair of this plane is more than symbolic. It physically settles over all who come here. Each week, travelers must successfully save versus spell or be trapped on the Grey Wastes, unable to muster the desire to leave. Once trapped, a body becomes a larva in 1 to 6 months. Despairing travelers must be rescued by others if they're to be saved. Special magic conditions. Since all color is drained on this plane, color-based magic, prismatic sphere, chromatic orb, for example, would be ineffective here. Neither can the intense despair of this place be overcome by magical means such as emotion, calm emotion, things like that. Sorry about that. Native inhabitants, Deox, Hordlings, Larva, Night Hag, Yugoloth all live in the Grey Wastes. Devils, demons, and Garoliths can also be found on this plane, often leading armies against each other in another assault of the Blood War. Morgan of the Dragonlance saga, and Cyric, Mask, and Shar from the Forgotten Realms settings are known to occupy this plane. Shar, the goddess of whispers and mysteries and yada yadas. Alright, so that was a brief look at it. Kind of our starting point. Moving in to a little bit more depth. There's going to be some repeat here, but I think it's kind of cool to read through and look at a little bit of the three glooms and the natives and the factions and all that. So we're gonna to spend a little bit of time in this book. Skip around, don't worry, we're not going to read through that whole wall of text. Some of it though. The endless despair of the Grey Wastes. Now let me go to single page so I can read a little better. I suppose I could tell you about the waste, but what would be the point? It's not going to change with knowledge, and it's sure not going to feel anything you do to it. What? You just wanted to come here and see the place for yourself? Well, all right, for all the good it's going to do you. I was like you once, bright-eyed, full of dreams, and ready to take on the multiverse. All of that changed when I'd seen the truth behind this place. See, the wastes take your dreams and perverts them. It grants your deepest wishes, and then it takes them away. For the first few days you're here, you have incredibly vivid dreams, and your imagination runs rampant. It goes faster and faster until you realize that you're running out of ideas, until you realize that this place has sucked everything from you. There's precious little that'll keep you from ending it all then, unless you can hold on to a scrap from your past and nurture it until it becomes a hope for the future. You'll just fade into nothingness if you can't. Yeah, some places here might interest you, but unless you've got the spiritual equivalent to the strength of a titan, you won't be interested in them by the time you get there. What's the point? You're going to go ahead and do it anyway, no matter what I tell you. Powers know that I've tried. There's just no use in trying to stop you, no use in doing anything. Anything at all. Dalton the Grey, a terminal visitor to the Wastes. The Grey Waste lies at the nadir of the lower planes, where all the evil in the planes converges into one gigantic colorless clash. It gives rise to the purest, most undiluted corruption of the multiverse, or so it's said. Its inhabitants practice evil for evil's sake, without any of the considerations of law or chaos that taint the rest of the cosmos. So what is pure evil? Well, it's not what you might think. It's not the consuming rage of the abyss or the devious plotting of the Bator. It's apathy, hopelessness, and despair. It causes the death of all of a body's dreams and desires, leaving the withered husk of what used to be a fiery spirit. Under this influence, a Burke gives up on things that used to matter and gives into total lack of feeling. Sidebar. See this? Hundreds of miles of destruction, millions of bodies littering the field. Sentence death throughout. I love it. Tarnalock, a Mesloth says. The gray wastes encompass three layers, Oinos, Niflheim, and Pluton. One might more properly refer to these layers as glooms because, well, they're nothing if they're not gloomy. See, the gray waste is more than just a pretty name. It's a way of life and the only description of that plane that completely defines it. And here you have a picture of larva. When you pop into the gray waste as a petitioner, that's what you start out as. Remember, your Yugoloths do not come from larvae. They come from no one has ever defined it. They spawn as needed, when needed, whether you're following the Hades line of thinking or whether you're following the Gehenna line of thinking. Yugoloths have no need for these little guys, and technically neither do demons as much as devils. So devils can be found here gathering larvae as a lot. Anywho, the gloom touches all, including the spirits of everyone who comes here. Everything is a shade of gray, ranging from charcoal to almost white. It's been said that a body's possession turned gray as soon as he sets foot in the waste. That's nonsense. The bleaching takes about a week, though any bright colors brought here begin to fade immediately. Once that week's up, though, even those vibrant of colors is gone, leached away by the wasting tan of the gray wastes. Then even muted colors stand out for as long as they last. Of course, in a place where even dark black is an exception, somebody wearing colors is bound to give another Burke a splitting headache. It's like he's looking into a bright sun for the locals, and if one thing rouses them from their stupor, it's the pain of color. Excuse me, The newer residents, still capable of caring, converge on the offender and beat him senseless, while they tear the colors from his body and bury them. Then they do the best not to make a body bleed. Even the dull red or green or blue of blood hurts their eyes, and they don't want that. No sun, moon, or stars brighten the glooms. The sky stretches out in a featureless gray expanse, and it's mighty difficult to tell where the horizon ends and the sky begins. One's just a little bit darker than the other. The lack of sun means no day or night, only the never-ending cycle of slight brightening and slight darkening. The cycle has no apparent pattern. It can brighten for hours on end, or it might take merely a few minutes before the dark encroaches again. And it's not like a body would want to measure time anyway. The plane suffers in a state of eternal waiting, both past and future, with all the boredom and ennui that such a situation entails. It's like a land of eternal twilight, but without the sense of closure that dusk brings. It's like dawn, but without the promise of a new day. The plane represents a constant state of interdeterminacy. It absolutely drives a body to the brink of despair and beyond. The fact is, the gray waste actually steals dreams and hopes from a cutter, draining him of all that he ever wished to be. Some say that the waste converts the dreams into power for itself. Who knows? For every week a person spends here, he must make a successful saving throw or begin to lose his sense of self. This comes in the form of incredibly vivid dreams, so vivid that a body can smell and hear what's in them. These dreams dredge up a person's past, ransacking their memories and their desires and spilling them onto the ground of the gray waste. The poor basher being drained finds the process enjoyable at first, until the dreams die down in intensity. As they do, his imagination and willpower dissipate as well, and he finds himself wondering why he ever dreamed in the first place. For some, the loss of hope and feeling is welcome solace. Most don't realize that only the better dreams slip away, the dreams that make life worth living. And when a body's finally succumbed and lost his dreams completely, he no longer desires to leave the waste. Within 1d6 months, he loses sight of his own identity and vanishes into the uncharted regions of the plane to shed his mortal guise. The last anyone sees of him is a body trundling off into the distance, though bashers tell tales of larvae with faces that seem strangely familiar. It's for this reason that certain groups of good folk make it their job to track down sods afflicted with soul-wasting sickness of the wastes. These do-gooders want to save as many from the horrible fate of larvadom as possible, and to keep the cursed fiends from gaining new recruits. Though night hags hunt such parties viciously, these humanitarian bashers persist in their missions of mercy. Denizens of the lower planes seem to be immune to this draining. Either these creatures completely lack dreams and hopes, or they've got extraordinary mental fortitude. Whatever the case, a fiend has never been known to revert to larva status. Whispered rumors speak of being so incredibly powerful that the battles they wage use the very powers themselves as pawns. Occasionally, these forces stoop to using even lesser beings, such as humans, but they remain hidden to human knowledge. The rumor mongers say that these are the forces behind the plains, the very personification of good and evil. Of course, as far as anyone knows, this is just a rumor and idle speculation bought on by too much drink, not enough sleep, and outside influences. Matter of fact, it sounds like a lot like something a Chateau Garolith might make up. Still, the speculation brings a large number of visitors seeking to discover the truth. Again, a lot of really well-defined information, but the big questions are left to you and me as DMs, as world builders, to ultimately decide on. Gives you some leads that you can follow to your own conclusions, but doesn't require you to say, is this, that is that. So kind of have fun with that. So getting around, real quick here, as mentioned before, a body can get in and out of the Grey Waste by plenty of roads. It's just a matter of mustering the will to do so. Most people can't leave once they've been here for too long, however. 3 of the Outer Plains' 4 great paths form an essential part of the landscape of the Grey Wastes. Mount Olympus, the River Styx, and the World Tree Yggdrasil. Only the River Oceanus doesn't lead here, and that's because its waters are too pure to be polluted by the evil of the wastes. Besides, one path already touches each layer, another just confuse the issue. Guards watch each of the major paths. The powers and the Yugoloths overseeing the Blood War like to know who's coming in and going out. Only the Yugoloths do anything to restrain a Burk, since the other guards just really don't care too much. Plenty of standard portals and gates appear here as well. From the top layer of Oinos, they lead to Gehenna, Carcerai, the Outlands, and the Astral. All portals out of the place look like great spinning coins endlessly turning in the air. They are immune to the color-leaching qualities of the Grey Waste, perhaps due to some influence from the plane which they abut. The portals leading to Gehenna are made of copper, those to Carcerai are of gold. The Outlands portals shine silver, and the Astral portal gleams platinum. Their color and size glow like beacons across the waste, making them visible for miles. To travel anywhere on the Grey Waste outside of a power's realm, a body has to learn the trick of not concentrating on his destination. Only the lack of desire or care to reach a place allows a person to make much progress. He moves about 10 times faster if he's intent on reaching a certain point. All sorts of terrain cover the land, giving a body the option of traveling by horse, by foot, by boat, or by air. And plenty of roads wind through the wastes, but none of them span more than a mile. Seems that builders just give up with the futility of it all. Teleportation onto or around the waste, whether by spell, teleport or teleport without error, natural ability, or magical items, are difficult, and it's impossible in Oinos. The other 2 layers pose about a 75% chance of failure, and that's enough to deter just about everyone but the craziest demon. Speculations abound about the cause of the limitations, including the following rumors. The very similar nature of different parts of the plane confuses the magic. It all looks alike, even to a spell. It's some condition imposed to limit the movement of fiendish troops to the main battlefields of the Blood War. It could be something of the plane itself disliking such freedom of movement. After all, despair takes a bit of time to set in. If visitors can simply pop in and out, the waste can't claim them among its victims. Creepy. Mount Olympus's connection. The very base of Mount Olympus runs out not far from the gates of Hades' underworld in the 3rd layer of Pluton. The mount remains an excellent way to bypass the other layers, and it sees a fair amount of traffic. A body can either climb down the slopes of the mountain or make his way through the winding passage inside of its vastness. Of course, that's the longer way and mighty uncertain for a person who doesn't know where they're going. The mount holds a lot of dead ends and thus a lot of bones from sods who just didn't know enough to find their way out. Hades has put large gates around his realm so he doesn't get the curious and the gawkers wandering through his home without a good purpose. Though his wife might get lonely, Hades suffers from no such affliction. Homages to our Hades Persephone old Greek mythology here. Next up is connections or River Styx. The Grey Waste has the dubious honor of being in the middle point of the Styx. The river usually moves slowly through the waste, though in a few places it gives way to sudden swirls and eddies, spinning the foolish and unwary down into watery and forgotten depths. The Styx flows only on the first layer, Oinos. The water is no more powerful here than anywhere else. Dark as pitch and nearly as viscous in some places, the Styx brings oblivion to the memories of any Burke being stupid enough to touch it. The foul river fairly teems with transports coming and going. It's the easiest place to get on or off the red current, and Marinloths constantly ferry passengers here. Hydroloths swim the polluted river following the barges of Marinoloths. This is also the most common decamping point for the armies of the demons and the devils. Their blood only helps to pollute the waters even further. Yggdrasil, the world ash, and third connection to it. The world ash has its roots in the hearts of the second layer of Niflheim, growing from a low hill within hailing distance of Hell's realm. The dragon Nidhogg layers here with her spawn of young dragons. She devotes herself to chewing down the tree of wisdom, her mighty teeth tearing a hole through the very base of the tree. Though she's wingless, as are most, what are these? Lenorn worms. Lenorn dragons would be our Nordic dragons for D&D 5e stuff. She's still a formidable opponent, as the bones littered about the base of the tree suggest. She won't take time to attack someone coming down the base of the tree, but she will defend herself and her numberless brood from anyone who dares to assault them. A wise person just descends on the opposite side of the tree. Yggdrasil offers one of the few ways a person can get into Niflheim without going through the first layer, and so it is prized amongst travelers hoping to avoid the Blood War skirmishes. So 3 layers, 3 different ways to get into them. In addition to the normal planes and portals, you have connections to Mount Olympus going to the 3rd, Yggdrasil going to the 2nd, and the River Styx moving amongst the 1st. Not going to worry about the Blood War. Not going to worry about magical conditions or spell keys or power keys. But the denizens of the 3 glooms, we're going to take a look at this, and then we're going to take a quick look at the glooms themselves. Oinos, the battle plane, Glitter Hell, the Wasting Tower. Some fun stuff in here. So, yeah, we got a little bit of time to go here. Real quick. Scrolling back up, though. The denizens of the 3 glooms. The infernal creatures that haunt the glooms of the Grey Waste aren't as bad on first glance as those of the other lower planes. They don't constantly scheme and plot to crush anyone who crosses their path, and they usually don't engage in mindless destruction. Of course, it's a bad idea to generalize anyone or anything in the Grey Waste. The plane has its share of surprises, and the inhabitants are no different. A body would do well to keep in mind that these creatures call the waste home, and precious few on all the planes dare that. These things must have a reason for it. According to sages, the Yugoloths are native to the Grey Waste. It's a moot point, though, since they've pretty much packed up and moved to the furnaces of Gehenna. Now, all these beings remember the watchword of the Grey Waste. There's no cause and effect. Things happen because they must. The natives subscribe to this belief and all do their best to influence what must happen in a fashion that benefits them and them alone, of course. Each person defines what the must is, and they're all going to work to make sure it must happen. It's a strange setup. Plenty of creatures live here, and most have a sort of hierarchy. Yet it seems none care one jot or title for another, each using the other only to get ahead. It makes a body think that evil's got to be lonely. Of course, these creatures tend to think of caring as something for lesser beings. But a traveler finds an occasional group which does care for each other, and that throws off the whole equation. The best advice for dealing with folks in the glooms: avoid judging them as a group. They're individuals, and they'll individually surprise a person. Sometimes it's for the better, but most often it's not. Most of the human powers of the Grey Waste seem to be the powers of death or disease. It's said that many of them were once gods of law or justice, set to watch over the dead. They've been here so long that even they've been affected by the dreary conditions of the land, slowly becoming what they were supposed to safeguard. Now few of them ever feel the need to leave. Though they have the power to do so, they simply don't. Various non-human powers, none of whom are friendly to human or human folk, lay here as well. Of these, the scaly sea-confined Panzuriel is among the mightiest, though rotting Urturus of the orcs could give him a run for his money if they ever bothered to fight it out. One of the more hateful powers here is Segaloon, mother of the night hags, despised even by her own worshippers. Unfortunately, she's powerful enough to enforce their worship, and so she retains her lofty position. Karalyek of the Urds keeps to a gloomy cavern in one of the hillsides of Oinos, never venturing out for fear of retribution or of Kurtulamak. Abathor the Greedy, a dwarven power, we're looking at a Duergar, I believe, here, rules from his cavern in the Glitter Hell, one of the few places on the Grey Waste that retains color. The human pantheon of Toril has more than a few representatives here. Kalemvor took over many of Siric's duties in the Crystal Spire. Like many of the powers before him, Kalemvor arrived on the Waste as a power of law and justice. It's only a matter of time before that changes. Siric himself wanders the plains, and though he's built a new castle on Pandemonium, he can be found on the Wastes every once in a while plotting to take back his old realms. Shar and Mask also keep their realms here. Shar's Palace of Lost crouches, brooding in Niflheim, its windowless towers overlooking the bleak landscape. Mask, a roving power, nevertheless maintains a shadow keep in Niflheim. Nearly unapproachable, the keep is constantly masked in a fog that turns all but the most determined people aside, leaving them confused and standing at the point where they're first sighted in the realm. Side note, there was not a lot of mention of powers within Carcerai. Remember, powers in 2nd edition and 5th edition terms are said to be gods that can affect and create. Lots of titans were trapped in Carcerai. Lots of near powers were trapped in Carcerai, and I use the term "trapped" because that's the idea. You're almost big enough to threaten my godhood. Boop, go sit out in Carcerai. If you get strong enough to get out, come fight me. You ain't never getting strong enough to get out. But we are seeing a lot more deities arriving here in the Grey Waste in Nine Hells. Likewise, Gehenna had a handful of deities, but there seemed to be more neutral evil, human-facing, mythological pantheon-facing deities, here as well. Continuing on, the East Indian power Ratri, the Queen of Darkness, usually keeps her unlit realm in Niflheim. She's one of the few powers of the Waste not given to evil, and her realm may be a safe haven for travelers if they can manage to find it. As her chaotic nature demands, she moves her realm as she pleases, occasionally even stealing a bit of ground away from the other powers of the Waste. The Greek witch queen Hecate holds the realm of Aea in Pluton. As goddess of the moon and magic, she's cautiously worshipped by mages hoping to gain insight. More often than not, she answers their prayers with an intuition that's as much a curse as a blessing. Morrigan of Krynn maintains the Fortress of Disease, which rises from the rolling hills of Oinos, far from the main battlegrounds of the Blood War. Not many Burks like to visit here because the plagues around here are more virulent than just about anywhere else on the plains. Even Urtrus might hesitate to pay Morrigan a visit. But despite these lofty names, the best-known powers of the Waste are the powers of death. The Norse Hel rules the realm of Niflheim, and her judgments hold sway over much of the rest of the lair of the same name. Hades of the Greek occupies a similar position in Pluton. Indeed, most primes simply call the lair Hades. And while Aran of Anwan doesn't have a lair named after him, he's one of the more influential powers of the Waste. An awful lot of death surrounds these three powers, and a body would do well not to irritate any of them. They're not jealous of their portfolios, and they do work together to punish those who scoff at the death gods. Recently, a powerful Ultraloth has been offering his service to these powers. Ousted from his position as Oinoloth, the master of the Wasting Tower, the Ultraloth Anthraxis wanders through the Grey Wastes, hoping to secure a position as a proxy. None of the powers trust him, though, and all have turned him away. Fortunately for him, Anthraxis is practically a power unto himself. Powers petitioners, not going to worry about that. The natives, the omnipresent larva. 3 sets of creatures make the Waste famous, and each of them is as influential as Colossagrooms in their own peculiar way. The omnipresent larvae are the spirits of selfish mortals, evil beings whose actions in life are so malicious they didn't have to suffer through the great despair that the rest of the petitioners have to endure. They transform directly into this form at their death. Either that or the larvae were the unfortunate victims of the night hags. Larvae serve as the currency of the lower planes. They pass from the hands of the hags to liches, Tanari, Batizu, and Yugoloths. The liches use them as additional power for spells and life force. The fiends use them as potential recruits for the blood wars, as powerful for spells, and for just food, plain old food. It's a chancy life at best, but it's still better than remaining one of the yearning sods of the Waste. The second race of the denizens are the Hordlings, the misshapen bastard children of the Grey Wastes, like the mindless armies of Lemurs and Nuperibos on Bator, or the endless armies of Dretches from the Abyss. The Hordlings roam where they will, with little regard for boundaries and civilization. It's thought that Hordlings might actually be petitioners, their forms warped and twisted beyond recognition by the evil of the plane and their own twisted sense of self. Perhaps they refuse to let the plane break them or let go of their hatreds and their angers. That it's thought is why they're all individuals, because each has his own hostility and each nursed to a different end. Of course, that would mean millions of Burks had the strength to resist the Waste's influence. That means literally uncounted billions of the petitioners on the Grey Waste. It's frightening to realize how many souls have devoted their lives to the pursuit of evil. The night hags complete the triad. They harvest the larvae and contribute to the larval numbers with their own special powers. With their nightmares and familiars, the night hags ride herds over the larvae, gathering them up to sell whoever is offering the highest bid at the time. It's thought that the night hags are one of the more highly evolved form of the larvae, which might explain their strange powers to turn their enemies into larvae. Of course, that's just another theory. If it's true, I'd give the larva hope, so it can't be. Maybe a larva could grow into a night hag. Probably not. Up to you, though. Some have suggested that night hags are the ultimate form of hordlings. Evolved hordlings that have finally learned how to make their anger work for them. In fact, the night hags might just be the refinements of hags from the prime. Hag petitioners, as it were. Frankly, no one exactly knows how the three disparate groups tie together, but they inextricably do. They're all an essential part of the waste with the night hags on top. The three glooms, we're just jumping forward here a second. The waste is said to be the most evil of the lower planes. Certainly much more insidious than the others because it saps the will from a body before they even notice what's happening. The three layers of the Grey Waste echo the rule of threes perfectly. The first one holds the land of disease and stunted trees. Niflheim is all mist and pines, free of the wasting sickness of the first layer. The third comprises rocks and pulpars, bluffs and oceans. All three are equally dangerous. They just wear different faces. Oinos, the battle plane. We're just going to read I'm not going to get into the locations. That can be on its own thing. There's all kinds of really cool shit for each of those. I just want to get us the main overview of each of the layers, each of the three glooms, and we'll move on to our next edition because we are half an hour here. All right, Oinos, the battle plane. As the main battleground of the Blood War, Oinos never sees peace across the layer. Ever. Ever. It's the battlefield for the biggest armies the cosmos has ever seen, and the ground scarred from aeons of constant conflict. The sounds of claws clashing, weapons rending, and the screams of the dying echo across the layer. Even in a time of comparative calm, the moans of the wounded fill the air. It's almost enough to make a Burke crave the stolid despair of one of the petitioners, because at least they don't care anymore. The first layer is mostly flat plain, though some jagged hills break up the monotony. Stunted trees and plants dot the landscape, but all soon die beneath the feet of stamping hordes or from the taint of the poisonous air. In fact, all life suffers on Oinos, for it's a place of disease. Anyone who walks its surface has a 10% chance per day of suffering from a malady called the wasting sickness. The sickness drains 1 point from strength, constitution, dexterity, and charisma per day until all four reach 0, at which point you die. Or until someone casts cure disease on them. The disease is unique and it doesn't kill you until he's totally debilitated, and that it affects so many of your abilities. So you can sit there with 3 of the 1, 2, 3 strength, dex, con, and charisma. 3 of the 4 at 0, and the 5th one's still ticking down and you're still alive. That's horrible. It's thought that the disease stems from the constant decay of the Blood War. So much death occurs here that it would have been impossible for there not to have been some sort of major plague. Since just about all the bodies are left to rot where they fall, a remarkable stench of death permeates the entire lair. Fiendish bodies are extremely hard to break down if you're on a plane where they stay, and so the forces of decay have to work extra hard to turn them into the ash that eventually becomes the dusty gray ground of the lair. The combination of this decay and the evil of the plane creates the wasting sickness. Dun dun dun. Next up, Niflheim. The Northman's Despair. Niflheim, the second layer, has a bit more variety than Oinos. It's not just rocky terrain and scorched, pock-marked earth. Free of the diseases that ravage the first layer, it has abundant trees and underbrush. As a matter of fact, the layer looks like a verdant prime world, except that it's still all completely gray. The cooler air gives rise to a constant mist that twists and swirls around the branches of the trees and the strange bluffs that rise from nowhere to fall away just as quickly. The fog's thickness makes it difficult to see more than 100 feet. The mist also distorts sound and sight, and any sort of missile combat is nearly impossible. You've got to be able to see anything, and you got to get up close and personal to fight here. The fog also imparts constant dampness to anything brought here. Dry clothes become damp and metal begins to rust. Only objects wrapped tightly against the intruding fingers of the mist or maintained despite the mist escape their effects. Naturally, all manner of predators use the mists as cover to approach their prey. If the victim can't see what's coming, he can't prepare very well, can he? Thus, this land fosters loosened swords and lightning reflexes, at least until the waste's influence make you wonder why he bothered to worry. The majority of the predators of the layers are wolves, both dire and normal, and trolls, neither of which is particularly afraid of humans. Though the towns and realms here suffer despair like the rest of the waste, there are also places that keep a small flame of hope cherished against the dark. Arawan is a Celtic Celtic god of death that lives here. Queen she is, and we're going to skip past Arawan, and I recommend you reading it, getting this. This is really good if you're into a lot of the mythology being included in here. The Death of Innocence is another strange place. And then they have a lot about Niflheim, Hell's domain itself here. Hell, the Norse pantheon talks about the castle and the dinners and the hopelessness. All kinds of weirdness going on here. Pretty cool, though. But yeah, we've got to cruise forward to the last one of them. Kind of a short description before we switch editions here. Last up is Pluton, Olympian's Gloom. The third layer of the Grey Waste seems much like the other two in its gloomy feel. Mount Olympus's lowest caverns empty out here, and it's a favorite route for the Olympian gods when they visit their brother Hades. Of course, they don't do it very often. The layer resembles a subtropical climb on a prime world. It's dotted with willows, olive trees, and pulpars. All show signs of dying for lack of care and love, but then they've been dying for eons now. Any druid here feels the sadness of the trees as they recognize their mortality and the lack of love given to them. Some say that all of these trees, like those of Niflheim, are imbued with the spirits of petitioners, and all have an awareness of their fate, but no one can tell for sure. Pluton's climate is cool, but not as cold as Niflheim. These creatures wandering here are as fierce as uncaring as those of layers above. Each contributes only more fully to the coldness and hatred that permeate the entire plane. Aea is where Hecate lives. Corpus is another strange kind of location, and then we'll obviously get to the underworld of Hades here as well. That's a discussion for its own day. Not trying to no disrespect intended, but not a whole lot of fiendish interaction between Hela, Hades, and the rest of it. Just pointing out the Hades because it's part of the lower planes. The blood war spills out, and devils and demons do a lot of work here, as do Yugoloths. But most all of it, 99% of it, is limited to the upper plane of Oinos. So we're going to move on to our third. And just so you know, there's a whole lot in this box set about the Grey Waste, the Blood War, the battlefields, and all that. We're going to do that in a future video. Next up, third edition, the Grey Wastes of Hades. We're going to read through here real quick, page by page. Not a big deal. RTFM mode. Don't worry, this one is a little bit shorter. The fourth edition is even shorter, and then we'll get to 5e and be done. But yeah, you know, lore is a good thing. Don't be afraid of it. Please notice there is a consistency in, there is a pretty good consistency in the presentation, the lore, and the theory, even though we don't necessarily use a lot of human mythology in our D&D in 5th edition and modern D&D. There's still plenty of space and allusions left towards that, okay? Grey Wastes of Hades. It is where evil springs eternal, and it is a plain of endless apathy and despair. It is the great battlefield of the Blood War. Hades sits at the nadir of the lower planes, halfway between two races of fiends, each bent on the other's annihilation. Thus it often sees its grey plains darkened by vast armies of demons battling equally vast armies of devils who neither ask nor give quarter. If any plane defines the nature of true evil, it's the Grey Waste. In the Grey Waste of Hades, pure undiluted evil acts as a powerful spirit force that drags all creatures down here. Here even the consuming rage of the abyss and the devious plotting of the nine hells are subjugated to hopelessness. Apathy and despair seep into everything at the pole of evil. Hades slowly kills a visitor's dreams and desires, leaving the withered husk of what used to be a fiery spirit. Spend enough time in Hades and visitors give up on the things that used to matter, eventually giving up in total apathy. Hades has 3 layers called glooms. Uncaring malevolence that closely crushes the spirit permeates each gloom. Normal gravity, normal time, it may extend infinitely, but its realms are finitely bounded. Divinely morphic entities of at least lesser deity status can alter Hades, though few deities deign to reign in Hades. The Grey Waste has the alterable morphic trait for less powerful creatures. Hades responds normally to spells and physical effort. Strongly evil aligned. Non-evil characters suffer -2 penalty on charisma, wisdom, and intelligence while in Hades. On those intelligence-based checks, excuse me. Entrapping. This is a special trait unique to Hades, although Elysium has a similar trait. A non-outsider in Hades experiences increasing apathy and despair while there. Colors become grayer and less vivid, sounds become duller, and even the demeanor of companions seems to be more hateful. At the conclusion of every week spent in Hades, any non-outsider must make a will saving throw. Anyone that's not used to planar travel is what that means. If you came from the material world, prime material plane to Hades, you're effed. If you are an outsider, if you are a planeswalker, whatever you want to call it, then this doesn't affect you in the same way. No, second edition didn't care where you're from. Unless you were a fiend, you were effed, man. So travelers entrapped by the inherent evil of Hades cannot leave the plane of their own volition. Memories fade away, and it takes a wish or miracle spell to return them to normal. Hades links. The river Styx flows through the uppermost layer of Hades, and a few of its small tributaries may lead deeper into the plane, adding a change here. As with everywhere else along the Styx, sinister ferrymen ply its length, granting passage to other planes. Should connect to Pluton, the third layer where Hades himself is, wouldn't you think? Portals to other planes are fairly common, at least on the uppermost gloom, Oinos. Portals appear as spinning coins of color. Nothing to repeat there. It's consistent. Gold leads to Carcerai, silver leads you to the Outlands, copper goes to Gehenna, and rare platinum ones send you out to the Astral. The coin-colored portals glitter for miles. Inhabitants, foul creatures of every sort can be found in the Grey Waste. Because this is the battleground of the lower planes, devils, demons, slotty, Formians, and even the occasional Deva can be found here, spying for the war effort or deserting their unit. Of course, Yugoloths abound, despite the fact that most of their races moved to Gehenna. Night hags are also thick in Hades. They constantly seek petitioners called larvae, which they use as a special form of spiritual currency in their dealings with evil beings and deities. Besides Blood War, Detritus, Night Hags, and Petitioners, Hades hosts herds of fiery nightmares. Petitioners, worry about that some other time. The features of Hades, the glooms of the Grey Waste are just that. Dull gray lands. The earth is gray, the sky is gray, the petitioners are gray. Color is foreign here if vision itself is subverted. When visitors step into the plane, everything goes from color to white, black, or gray. There is no sun, no moon, no stars above. Just a bleak gray radiance emanating from the sky. This grayness affects more than vision. It's a spiritual grayness. It reaches into the hearts of all those who spend time here. Those who spend more time here than they should, such as all the petitioners, are devoid of feeling. They don't laugh, they don't cry, they just don't care. All they do is despair. Their hopes are gone and never to return. Both the entrapping trait of Hades and the spiritual sickness called the Greys are manifestation of the grayness of Hades. We're getting away from the gray plague of Oinos that was in 2nd edition, calling it just the gray. Oinos, the first gloom of Hades, is the land of stunted trees, roving fiends, and virulent diseases. But more than anything, it's a plane ravaged by war. This is the central battlefield of the Blood War. Fiends, warrior slaves, trained beasts, and hired mercenaries gather here to wage horrific battles on an epic scale. These battles despoil the already bleak terrain. The sounds of rending claws, clashing weapons, and screams echo across the entire lair. So when your players are new to it, remember that that's always there. If they've been there for a while, it's like, who cares? Did you see all that? The fight's coming. Well, maybe it'll put me out of my misery. What? Apathy. Apathy is the ultimate of evil according to Planescape. Trippy. 20-mile-high tower, Keen Oin, looks like nothing so much as a freestanding spine column. Some say that's exactly what it is, the backbone of a deity slain by Yugoloths. Keen Oin plunges as deep into Oinos' gray soil as it ascends into the air, so the tower's sublevels tunnel 20 miles deep. It's a big tower, man. The Wasting Tower is ruled by an Ultraloth prince that named Mydianclarus. In fact, some stories hint that the entire Yugoloth race was birthed here, rising in a pit at the absolute bottom of Keen Oin. None but the Yugoloths have ever held the tower, despite the constant array of fiendish armies outside. The rooms and the floors of the tower seem to have no end. Spawning vats, magical laboratories, and meditation chambers can be found here, as can orreries, suites of rooms for Yugoloths, and floors that are dedicated themselves battlefields and drill fields. Mydianclarus rules from the tower's zenith, and the tokens of his rulership is the siege malicious. Whoever rules the Wasting Tower is often referred to as the Oinoloth. Any creature that can successfully invade the Wasting Tower and make it to the top chamber has the opportunity to claim the title for himself. Claiming the title involves defeating the current ruler, then sitting on the Siege Malicious. The Siege Malicious is the throne of artifact-level power, and as such, it may grant powers over the lair of Oinos. Dun dun dun. The Siege Malicious is a major artifact. It is a gargantuan immovable throne carved from the stone of the Wasting Tower itself. The throne is inlaid with tarnished silver, base copper, and brass. A circular crown of rubies adorns the top of the high seat, which is just large enough to sit a huge creature. Many human medium-sized creatures would look ridiculous sitting on the Siege Malicious with their legs dangling several feet off the floor. Powers of the Throne. We're not going to worry about that. That's a whole bunch of 3rd edition shit that we probably won't do anyway. Second Gloom of Hades is a layer of gray mists that constantly swirl and twirl amongst sickly trees and ominous bluffs. The thin fog limits vision to 100 feet at the most. Muffles sound and eventually saturates everything with dampness. Niflheim is not as war-ravaged as Oinos, probably because the mist hinders combat. Many predators prowl the lands hidden amongst the mist, including fiendish direwolves and trolls. Vision, including dark vision, is limited to 100 feet, and listen checks suffer a -4 check due to the muffled nature of the fog. Death of Innocence. A small town tucked away in the misty pines. Death of Innocence is constructed of hewn pine taken from the surrounding forest. It holds more than 5,000 mortals and petitioners, non-larval by the way, though they mostly remain inside their dwellings, giving the city a vacant feel. Strangely, those who dwell here, who live behind the protection of the town's walls, sometimes strive to improve their lot and break out of apathy. Great wooden gates bar entry to the Death of Innocence. Both the gates and the outer walls bristle with spikes. Inside, a broad avenue leads to the town center, where a gray marble fountain stands. The wood of the buildings and gates ooze blood as if sap, confirming the belief that the petitioners are trapped within the wood. Neither the grays nor the entrapping traits of Hades can penetrate the walls of Death of Innocence. Third layer, Pluton. The third gloom of Hades is a layer of dying willows, shriveled olive trees, and night-black pulpars. It is a realm where no one wants to be and no one can remember why they came. Of course, petitioners have no choice in the matter to begin with. Usually, the blood war does not reach this lowest gloom, though some raids have occurred when one side or the other wished to retrieve the spirit of a fallen mortal captain who possessed particularly sharp tactical skills. The Underworld. The Underworld is contained within the walls of a gray marble that stretch for hundreds of miles and are visible for thousands of miles beyond that. A single double gate pierces the marble walls of the realm. Constructed of beaten bronze, these gates are dented and scarred by heroes intent on getting past. However, the gates are also guarded by a terrible fiendish beast, a gargantuan 3-headed hound made from the squirming, decaying bodies of hundreds of petitioners. Ew. Beyond the gate, the inside of the realms appears much like the outside. Blackened trees, stunted bushes, and wasted ground dominate the landscape. Larvae are everywhere, writhing in the dust, as are gray, wraith-like petitioners who are on the verge of being sucked completely dry of all emotion by the spiritual decay of the plane. When they lose that last shred of emotion, their remaining essence becomes one with the gloom of Pluton. Sometimes great heroes or desperate lovers from the material plane travel to this lair via a tributary of the river Styx, or portals hidden in great volcanic fissures. They come to the underworld because they believe they can find the spirit of a friend or loved one and extricate that spirit from a hopeless eternity. Besides larvae, fated petitioners, and the occasional foolish mortals, demons, Yugoloths, and devils roam the land looking for the choice morsels. So, we do have connections here with it. All right. 4th edition, tiny little bit about the Pluton, the Grey Wastes here, and then we get to 5e. Moving on here, right? A little bit longer here. That's okay. Pluton, the Grey Waste. We're not looking at all 3 layers here as much. We'll see here. A dominion of dying willows, shriveled olive trees, and black pulpars. Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. But that's okay. Pluton is forgotten by all but the most learned of sages. This cheerless land was once the domain of Nerul, a god of death, who trapped the spirits of countless mortals in his kingdom, holding them in his thrall. Some he punished with terrible torments, and some he forced to serve in his grim legions, but most he kept as powerless shades, aching for the release of true death. Nerul wanted to reign as the king of gods, and he sent curses and plagues against the mortal world to swell the numbers of the host of dead. Fate intervened in the form of a haughty mortal sorcerer queen, whose death brought her into Nerul's realm. The Lord of the Dead sought to bind her to him as his consort, but the sorcerer queen refused him. Leading a rebellion of tormented souls, the queen overthrew Nerul, broke his hold on the dead, and claimed his portfolio. To prevent her from becoming a tyrant in the same mold as Nerul, the deities elevated this mortal shade to their own ranks and appointed her the goddess of death, but not the dead. Although sovereignty over the dead has been denied her over the long ages of her reign, she has added winter to and fate to her domain. She is now known in the mortal world as the Raven Queen. This is where all of your Raven Queen lore came from. 4th edition, period. Rumors of other things, but as far as canonized as a deity in 5th edition or in D&D, 4th edition is responsible. So there. Fun little factoid. Although Pluton is largely abandoned and no new mortal souls come here, some spirits feared to pass into true death and choose to cling the half-death that Nerul granted them. Most of these are now hateful, mindless, undead creatures. Other mortal spirits were sentenced to torment or bondage that has not ended yet. For example, some spirits were designed to build a wall that perpetually crumbles before it is finished, or to move a mountain one spoonful of dirt at a time. Other creatures, such as minions of Vecna or plunder-seeking Githyanki, come to Pluton in search of wealth or knowledge lost for the ages. The funerary of wealth of 1,000 dead monarchs lies in the mausoleums and crypts of this gloomy place. So a lot different in our 4th edition version of Hades. Hades wasn't even a thing. It was called Pluton, and it was one layer. Moving on from 4 to 5. Oops, excuse me. We'll get to the right one here. Almost done, guys. Don't worry. We're getting there. Hades. The layer of Hades is called once again the Three Glooms, places without joy, hope, or passion. A gray land with an ashen sky, Hades is the destination of many souls that are unclaimed by gods or fiends. These souls become larvae and spend eternity in this place which lacks a sun, a moon, stars, or even seasons. Leeching away color and emotion, the gloom of this place is more than most visitors can even stand. Oinos, a land of dead gray ash, stunted trees, and virulent diseases, is stalked by roving bands of fiends looking for a fight or more recruits for the blood war. Niflheim, gray pines, trees blanket rolling hills and rocky bluffs, and thick, moist mists coil around their trunks. Pluton, shriveled willows, olive trees, and pulpars contribute to the gloom of this concentration of the deepest despair of the multiverse. The Plane of Gloom, 5th edition effects. At the end of each long rest taken on the plane, a visitor must make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature gains 1 level of exhaustion that cannot be removed while they're in Hades. If the creature reaches level 6 in exhaustion, it doesn't die, and instead it permanently transforms into a larva, whereupon all exhaustion levels affecting the creature are removed. That's harsh. That's harsh. I'm here for it. DC 10 should be a gimme for most of the characters that are playing around in Hades at this level. But you could get unlucky. Hades Adventures. Hades embodies despair manifested as apathy, pure undiluted evil, like an inescapable force of gravity dragging all creatures down, not in body but in spirit. Even the consuming rage of the abyss and the devious plotting of the 9 hells are subjugated to the hopelessness of the great wastes. It slowly kills dreams and desires, draining hope and optimism from formerly fiery spirits. Copy, paste, copy, paste. An adventurer in Hades can challenge characters to find an answer to the ever-present question that hangs over this place. Why bother? As apathetic despair saturates their hearts and spirits, they must find a way to rekindle the passion of life and the sense of purpose that drives them, or else succumb to the hopelessness of the plane. Adventurers might pursue a hag, a lich, or another evil spellcaster who comes to Hades to collect heart larvae for vile purposes. Once they're in the Three Glooms, the adventurers risk becoming trapped by the overwhelming despair of the place. Alrighty, man. So, a lot of stuff on Hades, despite us not really thinking about it as much in D&D terms. Hopefully this video is going to help change your mind on it and push into looking back at some of the resources we used. Why does it matter to a DM in regards to Fiends? Because the Blood War. Because it's a central meeting point between all four Fiends. You got devils, you got Yugoloths, you got demons, you got Demodan Garleths. It all goes splat in the middle. It all meets, all shit rolls downhill, right? It's downhill for both ways. Excuse the term, but so you can have a lot of craziness going on in regards to interactions with devils or demons, your fiends of your choice, under your terms, because Hades is kind of the meeting ground, the neutral ground. The big factor is the plane itself in this case. Not so much the inhabitants, but the plane itself really sucking lifeness out of you. Sucking the life out of your player characters, really threatening their well-being, their sanity, and everything else. On top of dealing with devils or demons or Yugoloths or Demodans or whatever, or all four at the same time. So I think Hades is important to understand where it fits in the lower planes cosmology, especially in regards to the blood war, the conflict that spans all of the lower planes, and this is the main battleground in it. Certainly there is a lot of good literary mythological references in here as far as rescuing a soul, sailing down the river Styx to rescue a loved one from the domain of Hades himself, Pluton. Man, a lot of good staging here for not necessarily fiend-bound adventures, but adventures that you could plan for that use fiends as bad guys that you come across for. But yeah, at the risk of hitting a full hour here, we're going to go ahead and finish up the video here. So thank you for hanging out. Lots of really good writing about, except for the 4th edition Manual of the Planes. A lot of good stuff given in the Planes of Conflict campaign setting book, Planescape campaign setting book, and other stuff. Lots of references to Nordic mythology, Norse mythology, and Celtic mythology, and Grecian mythology within the Grey Wastes and the 3 glooms of Hades as well. So give it another look. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've gotten some information out of it. And this video has kind of piqued your interest as far as using Hades as a fun location to play around with for Planescape or any adventure, really. A lot of good tie-in here. So likes, follows, subscribes are appreciated. Give me some comments. Let me know what you think. Join us over on Twitch if you'd like. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tuesdays through Fridays, U.S. Central Standard Time. We kind of do the same thing. We look at D&D, we chat about books, we chat about monsters, we chat about places, and I have a great time doing it. So thank you for your time. Join me for more stuff later, and we will see you soon. Take care.